Pardon?
I feel so long now.
Yeah, I know. Where'd you find the money for this, by the way? Yeah. Okay, folks. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's 7 o'clock. And I'd like to start with the Aboriginal Acknowledgement. We'd like to acknowledge that the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Tanaha, Silix, and Senex peoples, and is home to Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honour the connection to the land, rivers, and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. And with that, I'd like to know if there are any late items. Hearing none, I'd like to have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Renwick. All in favour? Carried. Thank you very much. Adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting of August the 17th, 2021. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Lachtenberg, Councillor Woodward. All in favour? Thank you very much. Recommendation from the Committee of the Whole, and the first thing up is the Nelson Hoops presentation to Council and a request from the committee. Jeremy Phelan made the presentation on behalf of Nelson Hoops, presented a proposal to Council to construct a regulation side basketball court at Lakeside Park. Council is now requested to approve the proposed location for a new court at Lakeside Park and an in-kind contribution of $7,500 that will cover staff time and materials for the work associated with the project. And staff is also requesting Council direction to engage with the Nelson Italian Society to explore the relocation of the bocce courts at Lakeside. That could probably be a separate resolution anyway, but it is. It's all part of the main one. So we need a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Lachtenberg, second by Councillor Renwick. Questions or comments? Councillor Page, and then Councillor Lachtenberg moved the motion, so we'll give him the first kick at it, then Councillor Page. Go ahead.
I just want to say that I think this is a great project. I think a $7,500 contribution from the city and in time, materials, and whatever other contribution is small amount compared to the great asset that we'll be bringing to the community. Excellent.
Thank you.
Looking forward to it.
Councillor Page.
Yeah, I would reiterate Councillor Lautenberg's points, and I would also just add this is exactly the way we want to see our community come forward as a group with an idea of funding and taking an asset that we currently have and making it better and moving it into a more professional stance. So I'm in full support of it, and I think it's going to be an asset not only to Nelson but to the district for which we are the center and we serve. So I'm also in support of it. It's a great idea. Done well. Good job.
Councillor Renwick, being a former basketball player yourself, can't find the mute button on his computer.
No, I got it.
You got it.
Thank you. You are right. I am a former basketball player. And I would concur with my colleagues, Councillor Lachtenberg and Councillor Page. I just wanted for your information to know I had a visit from Jim Savejny from Nelson Minor Baseball. He was just over at my neighbors the other day and saw me out working and came over and had a chit chat, and I chatted to him, and the basketball boys leaned on him somewhat for some guidance through this and presenting and what have you. And it's nice to see those groups working together and helping one another out for, a great common goal, I think, for sport for youth in this town. So kudos to them. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Woodward.
I just want to say what I think for me personally that this makes this a great investment is the low barrier. That we can have assets like this or disc golf, or just, that we have parks and that we have tennis courts, and these are all low barrier. You to get into play, it takes a borrowed ball and some running shoes, and it's just that anybody can do it, families can do it, and so I think those are really great assets for our town as a whole, and people should feel free to come out, exercise, especially during time of COVID, where I think we've all maybe sat around in our couches a little too much. So these kind of things are, I think, really great to get people out and about and getting good exercise.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Okay, and the motion is that council approve the Lakeside Park as a permanent location for the basketball courts as proposed by Nelson Hoops, and further the council provide in-kind support of $7,500 to the project, and finally that staff be directed to engage Nelson Canadian Italian Society to explore relocation and options for the bocce courts at Lakeside Park. All in favour? Carried. Thanks very much. And I imagine Nelson Hoops will be part of that conversation with the Italian Society as well.
Correct.
Okay, good. Thank you. Next is the Latecomer agreement, Latecomer interest rate. Staff are presenting a bylaw to set an interest rate for Latecomer agreement related to the installation of access to extended services in accordance with the Local Government Act, Section 5084. Council is now requested to adopt the Latecomer interest rate bylaw. And Kevin, do you want to give just a little bit of background just for the public that maybe chimed in here just before we go any further?
Yeah, this really is made to facilitate development, and this is in a case where one developer needs to put in the infrastructure that will serve further development down the road, and they have to pay for that up front, but they do get to recover that, I guess, so-called community investment down the road when other people development. So it's a fairness thing, I would characterize it as.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you. So there is a recommendation from staff, and the recommendation is that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Latecomer interest rate bylaw number 3529/2021 be finally adopted. And of course, you have options to that as well. So you need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Page, hand up. Councillor Woodward. Questions or comments? Hearing none. Sorry, Councillor Page, go ahead.
All I was going to say is I actually really appreciate this particular bylaw coming forward in terms of, like staff has said, the fairness that it sets up, but it also gives us that flexibility to develop areas of town and keep in consideration how we will allow other people to come in after the fact. And there's been a lot of discussions we've had around the table about various developments, and this piece really seems like a missing piece that now we get to have as part of our frameworks and our toolkits to push those along in a fair and equitable way so that we can see those developments take root. So I'm in full support of it. It's a great idea.
Thank you.
Good work from staff to put this together.
Thanks very much. Okay, any further comments? Hearing none. All in favor? Thank you very much. Carried. Thanks. Okay, up next is the Municipal Officers Bylaw number 3530/2021 for adoption. Section 146 of the Community Charter requires that the municipal officer position be established by bylaw. Changes to staff titles effective May the 25th, 2021 must be reflected in the Municipal Officers Bylaw. According to the Municipal Officers Bylaw number 3530/2021 is presented for adoption. And the background is effective of May the 25th, 2021, the Manager of Corporate Services title will be replaced with the title of Director of Corporate Services. And I checked with the Director of Corporate Services and she loves the title. The position is Corporate Officer of the Municipality. And there's moved by Councillor Renwick, seconded by Councillor Page. All in favour? Carried. Thanks very much. There you go, Sarah. And a new title. Okay.
Get more money with that new title?
Hang on a minute. We should have checked on that, shouldn't we?
Yeah, maybe we should back this train.
Whatever she's getting, she deserves every penny of it, I can tell you that. All right, neighborhood commercial C3 zone, corresponding bylaw amendments. The City of Nelson has received a proposal from 2 property owners of the neighborhood commercial C3 zone lands to explore a new zone that would better suit their needs, as well as those of the community. City staff has worked with the landowners to create a new zone that would allow for greater residential density, as well as small-scale neighborhood-type commercial uses. The new zone, neighborhood mixed-use MU8, would replace the existing C3 zone. So council is now requested to adopt this change, and I'm going to call on, is Natalie or Sebastian there that wanted to give a little bit of background before we dive headlong into this? I see Natalie's name.
I can speak to it.
Yeah.
Maybe for the benefit of the council and any member of the public listening in, it's an application to rezone 2 properties, only 2 properties in Nelson are zoned C3 neighborhood commercial. The intent to rezone these properties, or essentially change the zoning of these properties, is to make them a little bit more, make them more viable and ensure they're, that they are upkept and they provide a service to the community. So, working with the applicants, the city is proposing a new zone, which is neighborhood mixed use MU8. And the idea of that zone is somewhere between an R1 and the existing C3 zone. So allow a little bit more residential density, up to 3 units. And that is if a commercial space must be maintained on the ground floor. The type of commercial that will be permitted is really geared towards neighborhood type convenience. So really to make sure that it fits within the context, and it's not necessarily a commercial use that draws people from all over the city. It's more so serving the immediate needs of the neighborhood. So essentially, we've gone through the statutory process, the public hearing, and at this point in time, the next step, if council so chooses to adopt this this change to the proposed bylaw, would be to complete the readings.
Thank you, Sebastian. So there is a recommendation in front of us, and each one of these, should council decide to move forward, each one of these will be taken separately. Sarah, right? So is there a mover and a seconder for one, that the zoning amendment MU8 zone bylaw number 3531/2021 be read a 3rd time by title only? Councillor Renwick, second by Councillor Charwood. All in favor? Unless you wish to speak. Oh, sorry. You wish to speak? Councillor Charwood, go ahead. You were the seconder, so go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to ask the question about, there was an APC recommendation to council to do a heritage assessment, and where did that land in terms of this bylaw change and what would be required of the proponents going forward?
That was not an official recommendation of the APC. It was something that was discussed at the advisory planning committee meeting. One member was recognizing the importance or the potential heritage importance of these properties. At that point in time, it wasn't necessarily part of the overall recommendation, so staff didn't move forward. We also, we have a very large heritage inventory, and this has never been flagged as a heritage property. That being said, we understand that its heritage value could have been in the fact that it was a long-standing commercial, especially for the Burrell store, a long-standing commercial grocery store, but that is no longer in operation. Yeah, it was staff's opinion that that was not necessarily required at this point in time. nor was it necessarily brought forward to council as an official recommendation from the advisory planning committee.
And it's actually outside of the heritage zone as well. Councillor.
Yeah, but yeah,
But it could, yeah, it doesn't mean it couldn't be, but it is outside.
yeah, correct.
Yeah. Councillor Page?
Thank you. Overall, I appreciate the work that staff has put in, but I'm going to re-echo my concerns from before, especially having just gone through the public hearing where we did not get attendance from members of the public. And I really think that we need to look at our process to update it for the 21st century in terms of how we let people know that these things are happening, how we lower the barrier for people to participate. I think there needs to be a good look at what our timelines are for advertising, our destinations for where we advertise them. Something that we're doing, I believe, when we make it available, that these opportunities to engage with local government about what is going on in people's neighborhoods and these changes is not quite connecting with the residents and where they are in this digital space, because we aren't getting the uptake in terms of having people show up for these public hearings and provide their input. We certainly know that the proponents went through their own process and made sure that people were notified early in the process. And I just don't think when it actually comes to the space where we take information for the decision-making side of things, that we're quite making those connections. And I really think we need to challenge ourselves and the organization to find out what we need to do or experiment with what we need to do to get the word out on things like public hearings so that people have a quick and easy, frictionless way that they can participate and that they know it's tonight and they know it's here. And that's, for that reason, I actually think we've not quite allowed the public the opportunity to say whatever they need to say about it. I think in general terms, the bylaw is good and the zoning meets a lot of our criteria. I just think the public is getting passed over a little bit, and it's just, I think our processes have become a little antiquated in this domain.
Possibly, but Sebastian, on that note, would you just for council and the public that are watching, and myself, outline what the process is? Because I find it hard to believe that based on the process that we currently have, that people don't have an opportunity to actually respond and participate.
Yeah, and
Sorry.
so
Just a sec, Sebastian. I wonder if we should get through
Separate
this
that.
process and then have that conversation, because I don't think it relates to this particular zoning, unless someone thinks you want to table this and have more public consultation. We've had 2 readings, we had a public hearing,
Kevin,
we're on
could we
third
just
and
hang on a
adoption.
second? Just Sebastian, could you please give us that outline? I think it's important because I don't want the public to feel as though, as Councillor Page said, they're not being connected with. They are being connected with. And this bylaw that's in front of us tonight. So please, if you would do that.
So our procedure is that when we've received a complete application, the proponents are required to put a posting, so a sign on their property. And from that, they host a public information session. And that is above and beyond the statutory requirement of the Local Government Act. The purpose of that is for the community to get a chance to dialogue with the proponent early on in the process before it comes to council, and it's a little more rigid once it gets to council to start changing stuff around. So the idea is for staff, proponent, and the community to chat and try and find solutions to potential issues. After that, it's presented to council, and then it triggers the official rezoning process. Then we are required by the Local Government Act to schedule a public hearing. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
I just thought you skipped a bit of one piece, but anyway, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So once a public hearing is set, we are required to do mail-outs within 60 meters of the subject property. So in this case, this was done for each of those properties. So within 60 meters, I would estimate between 30 to 40 properties would have received a letter for each of those. So a total of 60 to 80 properties would have received a letter informing them of the public hearing, how they can participate, and if they have any concern, who to contact. In addition to that, we are required to do 2 public notices in the newspaper. And those are done in the 2 issues, so the 2 Thursdays before the public hearing. So that is the process. I have heard from residents prior to the public hearing, prior to introducing it to council, once there was a community session. I had heard from a few members, but not many. Typically, our process, I don't know if council remembers when we went through Granite Point, same process. It was potentially more controversial. We did get quite a few member of the community attend, so I think the process has worked. If nobody participates, I'm not sure why. It could be that simply they were in agreement, or it wasn't controversial, or they didn't have any strong opinion either way. So in the past, it's worked. So I can't quite explain why we haven't received or any feedback through the proper channels for this one.
Thank you. And so we'll stick with this piece here, but Councillor Page, we can have a further conversation about maybe figuring out better ways to communicate with people if we think that there's a gap going forward. So the first, number 1, is that the zoning amendment MU 8 Zone Bylaw 3531 2021 be read a 3rd time by title only. All in favour? Carried. Thanks very much. And number 2, that the zoning amendment MU 8 Zone Bylaw number 3531 2021 be finally adopted. All moved and second, moved by Councillor Renwick, second by Councillor Charlwood. All in favour? Thank you. And that the official community plan amendment neighbourhood commercial designation change bylaw number 3532 2021 be read a 3rd time by title only. Need a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Woodward and Councillor Charlwood. Questions or comments? Councillor Charlwood.
Sebastian, for all of our benefits, could you explain, please, why parking is required? There are people concerned that, if we're trying to move away from car use, and why do developers have to provide those parking spots on their property?
Okay. Yeah, good question. I mean, that would definitely be up for debate. Parking is one that we often hear varying opinions on. I think here, 1 space per dwelling unit is in general conformity with what we require for residential developments in those areas. I think the reason for that amendment was actually to relax the parking standards for commercial. We were of the opinion that given the small scale neighborhood commercial, we didn't want any additional parking in addition to residential. So it actually limits, it reduces parking to what the bylaw would require if we didn't do that change.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Okay, Councillor Charwood. Okay. Any further questions? Hearing none. All in favour? Carried. Thank you very much. And the next one is that the off-street parking and landscaping amendment bylaw number 3533. Oh, I beg. Oh, sorry, there's 2 official community plan ones. Yeah. That the official community plan amendment neighbourhood commercial designation bylaw number 3532 2021 be finally adopted. Mover and a seconder, Councillor Renwick and Councillor Woodward. All in favour? Thank you very much. And finally, that the off-street parking and landscape amendment MU zone, 8 zone, bylaw number 3533 be finally adopted. Moved and seconded. Mover, Councillor Morrison, Councillor Renwick, all in favour? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody. Next one is a strata conversion for 266 Baker Street. And the applicant is requesting to stratify 266 Baker Street into 17 separate title properties, which will include 7 commercial units, 6 existing, 1 new, and 10 residential units, 1 existing, 9 new. The applicant is also requesting a development variance permit in order to increase the maximum lot coverage permitted on the zone bylaw from 90% to 97.3% in order to accommodate a new commercial and residential site as well as a parkade. And there's an extensive report from staff and the architect and the proponent, and I'm sure council has read through it, and there's a number of recommendations in front of us, but if you wish, I'll have Sebastian give us a bit of an overview before we start. Pardon? Pamela? I'm sorry, I can't see the names on this. I'm not sure who's on. I see Natalie now. Is Pam, are you there?
I am.
Oh, there you are. Okay. I'll have you on, you're up there on that screen, but not down on this. So, good. Anyway, now I see you. Okay, I'm getting 2 different.
Great. As we've identified, the applicant is asked to stratify these units at the Nelson Daily News Building into separately titled units, and that would be 7 commercial units. That's 6 existing commercial units and 1 new unit, as well as 10 residential units. And that's 9 new residential units and 1 existing residential unit. And they're also asking to vary the lot coverage from 90% to 97.3%. These are 1 and 2 story homes. They will each have access from an interior lane, which has a glass roof. The units will range from 1,041 square feet to 1,873 square feet, with 1 micro unit at 562 square feet. Proposal will support the OCP goals by developing vacant land in the downtown, by providing new housing and commercial close to amenities and services. It will provide a mix of housing choice. It will encourage higher density in the downtown core, and it brings mixed-use development to support and enhance our already vibrant downtown core. So staff are supporting these 2 recommendations.
Thank you, Pamela. So with that, I'm going to ask council, so we have 3 recommendations in front of us. And the first one is that pursuant to section 242 of the Strata Property Act, we've got a bit of an echo happening. The conversion of the previously occupied building located at lot A, Plan EP 19986, District Lot 95, Kootley District 08913-906 into strata lots be approved. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Renwick. Need a seconder. I got 2 screens here going.
Seconded.
Oh, Councillor Page, now I see you. Thank you. Second by Councillor Page. All in favor? Question, Councillor Renwick, or a comment?
Just a comment. Thank you, Mayor. I look at this project and there's a couple of things that come to mind and how it will pull that end of Baker Street, which, you know, for quite honestly has needed some help, especially that side of the block, for a number of years now. And I think that's a good thing for downtown. The other thing is a great project that we can actually collect some taxes on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Page.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Renwick. I think it's going to be a great building. Despite that, though, I would like to propose an amendment to the first motion.
To the
So I would like to, I'd like to propose an amendment. So I'd like to amend the motion to approve the strata lots, subject to the condition that a minimum of that it contain 3 long-term residential units and have a cap of 1 short-term residential unit.
I don't know that that's a
Now-
friendly amendment.
It's an amendment,
Pardon?
so I would need a seconder.
You need a seconder to attach that to number 1. That's a big ask on, so that's separate. I would say that's separate. Councillor
Well,
Rottenberg, you second?
Rottenberg,
Are you seconding?
I'll second that, but I do, it's, as the chair, I think it's your prerogative to rule on it, but I'll second for discussion. I'd be interested to hear what the discussion is on that.
so if I may.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
So the powers of section 242 reads that in making its decision, the approving authority, us, must consider that the priority of rental accommodations over privately owned housing in the area. Over the last decade, the proliferation of short-term rentals in this area of the downtown commercial district has displaced dozens of affordable long-term rentals. We so far have embraced a trickle-down housing model and its economic cousin, and like its economic cousin, we foolishly continue to wait for it to reach all of our residents. The data is clear that we are leaving many of our residents in the cold. We have the responsibility to the people of our city to ensure that development herein meets our community's needs. The artists and musicians that have given Nelson its spark and vibrancy continue to be pushed further afield and out of our community. Given our reputation as arguably Canada's premier arts and culture town, we allow this unbridled gentrification at a great risk to ourselves and unimaginable long-term cost to the humans who call us home. With this in mind, we must move forward with intention and embrace the fullness of the powers that the provincial government has given us in enacting this decision. I ask Council for your support for these 2 modest and reasonable conditions for the resulting strata. That there be a minimum of 3 protected long-term rental residential units and that the number of short-term rentals be capped at 1.
Councillor Lockenberg, do you wish to speak?
I might. It's an interesting. The one thing I would add, and I'm sure someone else has something to say that I would then respond to. But I would say at this point that within the Nelson Share Society building just around the corner, it does seem to me that our gentrification isn't as much of a danger here as it might otherwise be. I just want to recognize, because I can see, and I'm interested in, and actually when I read this, my first thought was, oh, that's going to be an interesting neighborhood when you have this low cost rental housing just around the corner from this, which would probably be more upscale. To be frank, though, and honestly, I didn't really consider the short-term rental part of it. I was imagining that these would be lived in on a long-term basis, even if they were condos. I was fine with that as long as they were occupied. So I'm interested to hear more from other councillors.
Maybe we could have Pam speak to it, and we do have the proponent here as well. So I don't know, Pam, if you want to speak to it. I guess I would say similar to, I think another development that council looked at is you really need to change your zoning, your policies, as opposed to looking at this as one-offs on individual developers. This particular developer has been working on this project for many years, trying to follow all our rules and regulations, and expecting one property to now conform to a new set of rules that council had ample time to change over those years, I think is a bit unfair. So that doesn't mean that you want to go and look at your policies and change them so that when your staff is working with these developers, that they know what your intention is, not after the fact when they've spent years to develop this. So that would be my only comment. I haven't worked myself with the developer or the owner. I don't know what the intent, in my understanding from just my knowledge of this project over a long period of time was it was meant for, long-term accommodation, wasn't developed as a hotel or whatever. That's why we have short-term rent or short-term accommodation in our downtown as a right of use is it has the same zoning as, the Hume Hotel across the street. So if council wants to change that and, make a differentiation between hotels or those type of accommodation and your other commercial, you certainly have that right. But your staff and the proponent have been working on the regulations of council to date.
Thank you, Kevin, for that clarity. Pamela, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Your mic's off.
Sorry. So I did speak with the applicant, and he was fairly adamant the project would not proceed if he has to do any of the units as rental. If possible, I would like to let him speak.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble understanding you, Pam.
Okay, so I did speak with the applicant, and he was adamant that this project would not proceed if there were any rental units. So he just could not, this would just not be economically viable, is what he said. I also did speak with a lawyer about this, and they said that any council decision to either reject a strata or to condition a strata, it had to be reasonable. So I guess I would echo Kevin's comments on this in that many local governments have policy around this. In Nelson, we don't. And so in the absence of that policy, when you have a proponent who has met the majority of the regs, then at this point you stop them. I'm not sure that would be considered reasonable. I don't know. And they couldn't tell me at that point either without really getting into the details of this project. So I guess I would just kind of leave it at that and say I'm just not sure at this point if we could actually move ahead with this. But if possible, I'd like to let the proponent, Tim Perks, speak to this as well.
Yeah, so we'll just leave it with Councillor for the moment, Pamela. Thank you, and then we'll go from there. Councillor Morrison's got her hand up, and then Councillor Renwick.
So I don't support the amendment that's been put forward. I support the project as it's been indicated in our package this evening. I don't think that now is the appropriate time to try to hamstring a development to go forward. And I think it's going to be, I believe Councillor Renwick said earlier, like the development of that end of the street that we've been looking for some time to try to kind of invigorate going west on Baker Street. I think this will help with that, and I look forward to not seeing an empty parking spot there. I'm kind of excited about the whole project going forward, and I wish the proponent all the best in this undertaking to rehabilitate an old building, and I appreciate the work of Thomas Lowe in maintaining what is there that's historic and not making fake history, as I've heard it referred to as when some people have done renovations in town, that it's got its own little taste that will bring it along, but still tie it into the rest of the downtown core.
Thank you. Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Mayor. I just to Councillor Page, if I were Mr. Perks, I'd be very upset right now. I can't go along with this at all. We've got a potential there, 9 units. There's a potential there of 9 homes being for sale in Nelson, many of which could become rental or have rental units in them. I think that's quite honestly small and short-term thinking. He's invested a lot of time, money, and effort into this project with a great amount of thought in the way that it looks. And to echo Councillor Morrison, Thomas Lowe did a great job there. I really, if I were Mr. Perks and this came down, I'd walk away. If I was a developer, I'd walk away with a with an amendment like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Luchtenberg, for the last time.
Yeah, I'm not as concerned about the affordability on Baker Street. I think it's very tough to do a project like this and make it affordable. And like I said, with the Nelson Shares complex or building right around the corner, you've got a nice balance of low or affordable housing and potentially high-end housing. I'm perfectly okay with that, and I do like the look of this project. But this is the second meeting we've had in a row where we've been sort of grasping for a policy and putting it on the backs of, potentially putting it on the backs of any individual project. So I'd like to call that out to Kevin, Pam, and Sebastian that we need to do some policy work here, so that guys like Tim don't get, whether it passes or not, they still even kind of getting this thrown at them. It's a little bit unnerving, I can imagine. So let's get to work on developing some policy.
Thank you. Nicole, Councillor Charlwood.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the sentiment behind the amendments proposed. I too am in support of this development, however, and the question that came up for me when I was reading the report, there was a statement in it that said, the chance of what will happen is that people will move out of sort of more affordable housing into this housing and make the affordable housing more available. I'm not sure I agree with that statement. I think it would be interesting to track that. I think this kind of development may bring in people from outside to purchase and invest. So again, I like the sentiment, and I know we've had this discussion twice. I just want to remind council that we also have on the table the affordable home ownership program to review, and that's an opportunity for us to be reviewing some of our policy. I don't agree that it's with this particular project we should be making policy changes, but that we do have another opportunity coming quick on the heels of this review to allow for some of that policy change that I think several of us on council are interested in pursuing further. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Charlwood. In closing, I would just remind council, those of us who have lived here for any length of time, that building sat empty for quite a long time. And a group of local investors basically grabbed it by the boots and dragged it up to where it is today. And they've done a miraculous job with the existing Nelson Daily News building. And this project here that they put forward to us, they worked very closely with their staff. And they came forward, including the work with Thomas Lowe, the architect, with what I think is a marvelous project for our downtown. And it helps fill a space, or most of a space, that we've been complaining about for the best part of 20 years. There was nothing more than a dust bowl down there. I'm very much in favor of moving this forward, and I will not be supporting the amendment. So I'm going to, with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? On the amendment. On the amendment only. Opposed? The amendment fails. And now we're back to the number one. And we had a mover and a seconder. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Carried. And number two, that the authority to exercise the power and performance of duties required under Section 242 of the Strata Property Act to allow for the stratification of the existing building, Lot A, Plan EP 19986, District Lot 95, Kootenay Land District, PID 08913906, be delegated to the city approving officer. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Renwick and Councillor Woodward. Questions or comments? Question from Councillor Woodward, the seconder.
I don't know if I don't exactly know where I could fit this in, but and I couldn't fit in the last one, but I just want to state that I'm in agreement with this. I think this is a really good project. it is going to help that side of our town, and I think the design is great from a local architect. So excellent work there. But I did want to just say that we have a housing crisis here and in Nelson, and I want to acknowledge that what Councillor Page said is it is troubling how expensive this town is getting. We all know that. And what Councillor Lautenberg said with the housing that's been built just down the road, with the Christian Fellowship organization, is a step in the right direction for affordability. But I do think it's something that we need to consider as we move forward with these projects. That we could become a town of a very hard town to get into. And I think of my own child, will they ever be able to afford to buy a house here in Nelson? I don't know. But it's something to consider, and I would like to challenge the planning department and the staff of the city to think about that. How are we going to make this town more affordable? I do support this project, but I think it's an important discussion to have for the future of Nelson. So thank you very much for giving that moment of opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor? Carried. So number 3, that the application for the development variance permit to vary the requirements of zoning bylaw 3199 2013 for the purpose of providing increased residential and commercial development and parkade be approved for lot A, Plan EP 19986, District Lot 95, Kootenay Lake District, PID 028913906, as per attached plans as follows. Zoning bylaw number 3199-2013, section 617 of Schedule A, to increase the maximum lot coverage from 90% to 97.3%. Moved by Councillor Renwick, seconded by Councillor Charlwood. Question or comment? Councillor Charlwood as a seconder.
Thank you, Mayor. So parking, I again question parking, and in this regard, it's with respect to drainage. So I know, like residentially, we have a max and a certain amount of permeable land that's required. And how does that work in the downtown core? I'm concerned about, flooding, lots of water. If there's no place for water to go into the ground, what does that look like from a planning perspective?
So typically in downtown cores, you have very minimal requirements for any kind of permeability, just because you're trying to maximize your commercial space in your downtown. And so we get into what we try to do is outside of the downtown core. That's where we get into reducing the lot coverage so that we have that permeability. But we really are trying to create this successful kind of vibrant downtown. And so that requires that we really maximize the limited amount of space that Nelson has in its downtown core.
Follow-up, please?
Can I just,
Yeah.
maybe I just add to that?
Hold on, just a minute. Hold on, Councillor Kevin.
Yeah.
Just wants to add something.
Yeah, so in terms of how we manage the water or the drainage in the downtown is actually tie into our storm system. So that's the difference, is where you have runoff from a residential property. Some of that goes into storm, obviously your yard and all that doesn't, but I believe this building was tied into the storm system when they did a earlier upgrade of the building. So it, unlike some other properties, it does drain properly into the storm system as opposed to just out on the street.
And
Yes, go ahead.
follow-up, Mayor?
Yes, absolutely.
Just asking about the parking and how, why 11 spots?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear your last part. Go ahead, Pamela.
Right, so in the downtown core, we actually, for mixed use buildings, we actually have a reduction in place for those buildings. And so if you provide both residential and commercial, you actually are only required to provide 50% of those spaces. So for this building, they actually only required 7. It's just, given that they need a parkade for those 7, it doesn't make sense to just have vacant space down there. And so they're adding things like handicap parking, they're adding bike stalls, they're adding electric bike stalls, they're adding electric vehicle stalls. So it really is just a function of maximizing and being efficient with that amount of space in that one floor of the parking.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Pamela. Thanks, Kevin. Okay, all in favour? Carried. Thanks very much. Thanks, everybody. Okay, next. Notice Untitled for 713. Oh, I'm sorry. Beg your pardon. Okay, we're going to, sorry, jumped ahead of myself there. Permanently Affordable Homeownership Program. And that's next on the agenda. Small Housing BC is partnering with limited number of local governments interested in participating in a small housing accelerator program to advance infill housing solutions and strategies for permanently attainable home ownership, and has asked the City of Nelson to participate. Council is being asked to commit 14 hours of staff time and $7,500 honorarium to participate in the project. And I think we'll ask, is Natalie this time? So hang on, Council. Natalie's going to give us a bit more. There's a fair size package here anyway, but Natalie, I think you're going to fill in potentially a few gaps for us. Oh. And we need to hear you.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
you know, I got to tell you, I think there's got to be a fortune to be made out there for some kind of a voice thing that would kick on the microphone. And Keith Page, you should be on top of that stuff and come up with some kind of little gadget, or maybe Rick. Go ahead, Natalie.
Yeah.
Instead of
Okay. Great. I'll just give a quick overview of the project. I'm available to answer questions, as well as Tamara White and Jake Fry from Small Housing BC are here just in case council has any questions that I can't answer. So Small Housing BC is a not-for-profit organization who has approached the City of Nelson and a few other local governments to participate in a small housing accelerator program to create permanently attainable home ownership, basically to try and help more people get into the real estate market. Additionally, the program would allow for at least 1 unit of dedicated permanently affordable housing. So one example that I also put in the RFD is an example provided by Small Housing BC. It's converting a single family home into 5 dwelling units, 4 in the main house plus a laneway house. The conversion from a single family home into multiple units on one lot would require stratification, with 1 of the 5 units sold below market value. Similar to the Nelson Commons building, where the city manages 2 units that must be sold 25% below market value. So the exact details of the program, such as the proposed number of units, allowed per lot, parking, lot coverage, etc., will be developed through consultation and research and customized based on a Nelson specific context. And yeah, that's basically the program. So we would be committing 14 hours of staff time and honorarium. And if council is in support of looking at solutions like this that could work in our community.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have a list a mile long here, starting with Councillor Renwick, Councillor Woodward, Councillor Page, and Councillor Charlwood.
Thank you, Mayor. Natalie, so are we talking about the development up in Rosemont, just below the Rosemont Elementary School? Would that be comparable to this?
I think this would be different. Well, yeah, this would be kind of different. I think this would be more homeowner driven rather than developer driven. So if you have one large house, maybe your family who has moved out, you're a single person, or you're 1 or 2 people, and you're looking at an opportunity to convert your house into a couple more units. Or maybe you want to stratify your house so that your kids could move back in and get into the real estate market in Nelson. Is that
Well, okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor, if I could?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. So, I guess my cut to the chase question is, number one, do we need this? The 2 units at the Commons, I understand, are a failure because nobody wants to buy them because they can't sell them and get market value for them. Because that's kind of part of the game, isn't it? Is buy a home, do some improvements to it, and sell it for a little bit more, and buy something a little bit bigger, a little bit better, a place you want, whatever. So, yeah, let's cut to the chase. Do we need this?
I guess that would be decided through public engagement and consultation. We'd go out to the community and see if this is something that our community wanted and needed. And I will say about the Nelson Commons unit, they were a little bit trickier to sell because you had to meet a list of criteria. But you still could gain equity. You could obviously gain equity because you're paying off your mortgage, but the price of the unit could still increase. And so there is some value to it, but it was a little bit tricky to find the people to meet that criteria, but it was also because those units were fairly expensive as well.
And the only
But everything in Nelson is fairly expensive.
Yeah.
the one thing of note is when you look at the number of people that live in Nelson and the number of houses we have, the average is of people living per unit is less than 2. So I always say we really don't have a housing issue. We have a housing number of people living in a housing issue. If we have lots of housing stock. We've just gone from 4 people living in a house to 2 people living in a house, and if you can give people options that have this big house and there's 1 or 2 people running around in it, this isn't anything that anybody would require anybody to do. It would be strictly up to the individual to decide whether they wanted to do that. And that's what the purpose of this study would be. Is there, to answer actually your question, Councillor Renwick, is there enough people that would have some interest? And Natalie's example, could you create home ownership for one of your kids that, does exactly what you suggested? And that's not all the units. It's right now that's one of the 4 units might be that, but it might not be 25%. It might be 10%, 15%. Who knows? I think we'd want to try to find something that works for our community.
Thanks, Kevin. Councillor Woodward, Councillor Page, Councillor Charwood, and I see Councillor Morrison's got her hand up there too.
First of all, I'd like to move this.
Second by Councillor Page.
Second of all, as I said in the last agenda item, there is a extreme housing crisis in this town. So looking for options on making affordability built into our town is, I think, a smart thing to do. Otherwise, it's just going to become, we keep relying on the marketplace to solve the housing crisis. You can guarantee that will not be happening, and our town will become hyper expensive, and only the wealthy will live here. So I don't know, some people might want that. I personally don't. I would like my son to be able to grow up and buy a house here someday, possibly. I just feel like this is a very interesting solution to an incredibly tough problem, which is how do you build in affordability into housing in a place like Nelson? Personally, I think this is an excellent, what would you call it? Foyer? It's the wrong word. How you're moving into something to look at it to see if it could work. So I would like to, yes, I'm for this. I think this is a really interesting model, and thank you very much.
Councillor Page.
I agree with Councillor Woodward in terms of we need to work on this problem. We need a program and a proponent to crack through it. I think each of the projects that we put forward is that as we go forward needs to chip away at providing the housing that is needed in our community for our whole community. And I fully support staff getting into this one. My only question here is, I think a lot of what I spoke about in the last piece of business touches adjacently to some of this, but I'm wondering, is this a place we task this group to ask that question or explore that question in terms of what kind of rental policy we need around strata conversions, or do we need to park something like that into our new initiatives bank that's coming up and have that looked at separately? But is there overlap here, Natalie, with what you heard in the last piece of business? Is this something that I can be comfortable with, satisfied that we'll kind of crack at that nut and work on this through this program, or are we still talking about very separate pieces of policy?
I think they're similar, but could be separate. I think you might want to have a stratification policy that was specifically designed for this program, but then you also might want to have a stratification program for something like we just reviewed in the last development variance permit, where they're really looking at a commercial property, which is a little bit different. So, and that one's more common. I think people do have stratification policies for commercial buildings. So I think they're similar, but you'd have two separate policies, or maybe one that address two different components.
And I think the other thing we heard was to look at the right to just have short-term accommodation in our commercial zone. I think that's different than stratification per se. Right now, if there was no rental units and I wanted to develop whatever 3 condos in my commercial building, you'd have no say over what that looked like. So what I think we're hearing, look at that short-term rental policy as well in commercial buildings.
Can I quick supplemental, Mayor? And I think that's right. Like, I think if we had a policy in place or explored the policy, there might be, values built within that says, you get a decade of having a short-term rental to help you get over the lift that has to happen to get the building in place, but that those things expire after a certain period of time. Maybe 10 is the wrong number, maybe it's 15, maybe it's 5. But I think we do want to explore both how to incentivize and support developers taking the big risk that it does mean to put out that money and needing to get that money back, but also recognizing that we have hotels, we have a vibrant tourist community, and having these particular pieces of stock set aside as mini hotels in perpetuity, we want to look at that and say, is this what we want our downtown to be on an ongoing basis? And is it moving the kinds of people that we know or exist in the community into a better place? Are they getting housed appropriately? So I will park those two things and send out an email to put them on our new initiatives list, and we'll move on with this piece of business.
Councillor Charwood, Councillor Morris.
I love this initiative. I think it's so worth exploring. We don't have to decide right now whether we like it or not. So I'm in support of pursuing this further. I guess my question to you, Natalie, is about and this goes a bit back to what Councillor Renwick was saying, do we need this? And you touched on the differences with other development that has happened in town. I'm curious about, and maybe the project folk can speak to this a bit more, but the idea of supporting people to get the financing in place to make these purchases, that's also something that wasn't in place for other developments. And I think that is an important component, because as far as I can see reading the report, simply by saying one unit has to be, it was just an example, but say we were to put that parameter, one unit needs to be 25% less than market value, it might not make it affordable. And so the piece for me that I found interesting about making it affordable is that there was also this opportunity to get access to supportive financing. Could that be spoken to a little bit more so we get a better idea of that?
We can't hear you again, Natalie.
I went on mute. I don't have many details on supportive financing, unfortunately, but I'm wondering if Jake, if council would feel comfortable with Jake or Tamara presenting from Small Housing BC, they might be able to speak to that a bit better.
Thank you, Natalie. Okay, we're going to keep going. Councillor Charles, what are you okay now?
I'd be interested to hear from Small Housing BC, but we need, I guess, your permission to do so, Mayor. I don't know if other council.
Motion. We need a motion.
Let's get through the speakers list here first. Councillor Morrison's up next.
Thank you. I have quite a few questions about this, and I'm just going to try to keep this short. And but I'm just concerned here is that when we're looking at this, is that are we then looking at again significant changes to our current bylaws and zoning? Because so I got to just go through an example. So when I read this, I could take my house that I live in, which would easily turn into 3 units without much thought, and I can still build a carriage house in the backyard, and I'm in R1. That now gives me 4 properties, and currently, Natalie, if I'm not mistaken, is I can have 3 properties. So now I can stratify and I can have more properties, and if I really work hard, I can probably turn my house into 4 units, and I can still have my carriage house. Now I've got 5 units on an R1 lot. So is along with this, are we changing our policies on zoning? Because I'm thinking that obviously this wouldn't be in line with the current zoning, and with the stratification. And then in terms of building code, is the expectation is that when I turn my single family home into a 4-unit home to then stratify and sell off in 4 lots, that I am going to still have the same building code requirements in terms of fire separation and the things like that? I mean that would be an potential significant cost, particularly for an older home, to make sure that you're on code, or are there going to be code exemptions for these developments of housing stock? So those are a few of my questions, because as I read it, I read it 3 or 4 times, and all those questions in my head, I couldn't find an answer to. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Morrison. Anybody else with questions? Councillor Renwick.
Thank you. And this is a question for staff. I have to tell you, I kind of like this idea, but here's my concern. Since we came to office, we've been hearing about the workload at the planning department. So now we got 14 hours and $7,500. And I'm curious as to know if we've donated $7,500 and 14 hours to any of the other housing projects that have happened in this town in the last couple of years. Housing is not part of the city mandate. We're to support housing. I don't know that we're supposed to support it with staff time and dollars. Thank you.
So that is why we have urban planning, is to actually do that, is to look at council's policies and zoning and all those sorts of things. So we support all housing by council policy and your bylaws and regulations and zoning. That is core work of the planning department. That's the urban planning side of it. And as you've seen over the year, especially I think when Alex was here, we took many tweaks and changes to our bylaws, from laneway housing to various things. So I would say yes, that is a core responsibility of staff. And when a development happens, whether it's private sector or non-private sector, as you saw in this last development, your staff spends significant amount of time to work with that that project to get it to when it comes to council, and that's based on your policy. That council has set those policies, and so I would say it's core work. I think you need to decide whether this particular piece is a priority. I'd say it certainly fits the mandate, but it's up to, and that's why it's coming here. Is does council feel this core work this work is something that you want to take us on? Because we do have, as you all know, a very busy planning department. Our director's leaving. We're putting a new director in there. I know I asked that very question this afternoon after the mayor gave me that same pushback. Why is when we're so busy, why are we putting more things on their plate? And we tend to want, as an organization, to progress and bring new things on. So they assured me that they have time to do this. And just to be clear, that policy work, that zoning change, OCP changes, all that's in addition. This is just saying, does this make sense? And those questions that Councillor Morrison asked, all those things would be addressed in that work, and saying, what is the appropriate place for these? Do we need zoning changes? Is this just in the sort of adjacent downtown core? Is this throughout the city? All those questions would be, is part of this work to get to a place where you'd ultimately make zoning or OCP changes or all those sorts of things. So now your staff has another set of policies that when people come forward with projects, they can promote. I was personally quite surprised by the amount of uptake on laneway housing. I didn't think too many people that had housing would want somebody living in their backyard, but apparently there are, and that proved to be I think that was a initiative to move forward with that. Nelson has one of the most progressive suite policies in the country, and you can see from the stats that I think Pam provided in the last RFD that 34% of our population is in rental housing, and we would be nowhere near that if we didn't have these progressive policies that we have. So it's really, to me, it's prioritizing. Is this where you want us to spend our time?
Thank you. Councillor Lochtenberg.
Yes, thank you. So the way I'm understanding this is that it's effectively professional development, both for staff, and then in some ways it helps us as council, because not only will we have better information from staff in regard to housing policy development, but we'll probably learn something along the way. So in that respect, it seems like a pretty good deal. It's not a huge commitment in time from staff, and if you guys think this is something you're interested in doing, then it seems money well spent. I would say what I'm particularly interested in hearing is if this, in my mind, this approach in terms of density and densification and this sort of ladder of home ownership, get you into a small home and then you can get upgrading, is something that makes a lot of sense to me. And maybe, who knows, maybe the silver bullet we need for young people to get into the Nelson housing market. Because in part, it seems to me, and I guess we'll learn this too, is that when you limit the kind of house that you're making available, you're going to create a type of house that's really limited to first-time buyers, single people or couples. You're not going to get that competition from more mature investors or buyers. So it seems to me a really smart thing. And from a city perspective and a city character perspective, it does a couple things. It increases our tax base, which seems to be a smart investment. Number one, and number two, it also creates more customers for our local businesses. Density helps increase economic development or improve economic development. So just in terms of an investment perspective, this seems like pretty small potatoes given potential return. So I'm for it.
Thank you. Kevin just touched on it. I had a few concerns about it. I actually thought it probably could have been a cow agenda item prior to this conversation, and I was a little disappointed that when I read that there was a time commitment here, that we had to get this on the agenda so we could commit to it. And it's been our experience over the last number of months in particular that staff's been asking us not to put additional stuff on the agenda, which was brought up by a couple of people tonight. There was a few things that sort of jumped out at me, and that was just a couple of them. There was a number of other ones, and the question I have is that I see our logo already on here with Vancouver, Pitt Meadows, and somebody else, and I'm just wondering, it seems a bit presumptuous to me to have that commitment made prior to a council meeting and a full discussion about this. And, how is this going to impact our OCP? I'll find it hard to believe we can do this with 14 hours of staff, to be honest with you. And in this conversation tonight on a number of projects, including this one, there's absolutely no reflection or conversation about how the region's going to pick up some of this slack. This has all been dropped on the shoulders of our municipality to continuously, be the provider, change paths in the middle of projects, etc. And it's becoming a bit cumbersome, in my opinion. And if we start continue down this road of creating doubt around our policies and direction, the lack of development is going to drive up prices more than development will. And we're going to turn people off from even developing in our community. And when Councillor Morrison talked about the density that this is being imagined in this program, I don't think people living in many areas of our community realize that this is what could happen in Uphill or Rosemont or Fairview or whatever the case may be. And it's council's prerogative to do whatever they want with this tonight. I think it's rushed. I think we were put in a bit of a wedge situation here because of the timing. And I'm very disappointed to see that there's presumption that we're in before we're in, and our logos being used already on the information that's in front of us. And that leads me to ask the question, how much of a commitment is actually made by the other people's logo that's on here? So it's not something that I'm disappointed that this is on our agenda. I'm disappointed how it's presented to us, and it flies in the face of what we've been told for the last number of months about the workload we have. And I'll just hold my breath, and I'll wait to see how this 14 hours is going to shake down for our staff and the commitment that we have to make. Councillor Page.
I'd like to move or make the motion that we hear from the proponent. It was asked a while ago in the
I'd
discussion.
suggest we put this on a COW meeting and have a further discussion, because this whole affordability issue is much bigger than what's been put in front of us today. I mean, we're talking about capital gains tax is having an impact on development, people selling their homes, etc. We're going down into a dark hole here that has buried a lot of communities over the years, trying to come up with ways to manage this affordability. I actually thought we were on a pretty good path.
Okay, but point of privilege.
Councillor Lachtenberg mentioned it tonight about the mix of housing that we're actually delivering.
Point of order.
I'm personally, as the chair, I'm not interested in hearing from the proponent tonight. I think we should have done this the way we've done everything else.
Point of order.
I think we should have done this the way we've done everything else we've done to date, and that is have a wholesome discussion, presentation at the COW.
Point of order, Mayor, because this is actually an agenda item, and we're here to vote. It's been motioned forward, so we're voting on it.
Yeah, so I'll call the question. I'll just let you know what my thoughts are.
Well, point of order, I have a motion on the table to hear from the proponent.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Sorry, I'm seeing. Okay. Opposed? Sorry, Rick, you had your hand up twice there. Opposed?
No, I was
Thomas?
trying to ask you a question. We skipped over the question. Do we do questions on?
Okay, I'll go back to all in favor again so we get the numbers right. All in favor?
All in favor?
1, 2, 3, 4. Carried, thank you. Who's representing the proponent?
It's myself, Mr. Mayor, Jake Fry. I'm at liberty to speak, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, to begin with, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to just set the record straight, and I completely appreciate the umbrage you took about having the logo on the presentation, but this, for clarity, we have worked with the municipality before, and the credits on the bottom of the pamphlet were in reference to the past work that we had done with yourself and the other municipalities. I'm sorry if it was misconstrued that you were already tied in, or that we'd already made an arrangement with the city, and I do apologize for that misunderstanding. If I could, just to jump ahead on a couple of the questions that have been raised with regards to staff time and the honorarium and affordability. I made a few notes. There was a question around affordability and how this is locked in. So we're working with BC Housing. We've also worked with a funder, Van City. So when we come to affordability, these units, we're looking at a couple of things that we're going to be able to offer. One is potentially these introductory units, or these cost-restricted units might be free of a stress test. Van City's suggested they'd be able to do that. And rather than actually sort of setting a fixed number below market, we're looking at two things. One, we're looking at creating affordability for the mean income at Nelson. So it's going to be catered to whatever municipality we're working in. So rather than forcing something to be meet a certain performance level, it's going to meet the performance level of the city. Likewise, what we're really looking at in the context of this is working out an opportunity to bonus that affordability, and that is what these projects will deliver. So every community is going to be a little different. You have zoning for pocket neighborhoods. We might look at this is appropriate for a pocket neighborhood, and you make it 1 or 2 or more units already in existing zoning. So there's a reward for creating the affordability. The idea is to create a little bit of density, have that density directly translated into affordable units, and then have those units available in perpetuity, so that young people or someone retiring can get into a housing situation rather than paying rent. They're actually building up equity. Yes, they won't make the same profit they would in a traditional sense, but they would be able to move on. As for the affordability, we're offering and participating with $20,000 worth of expert service, and we're also having a workshop that would be set up. So we're looking at 3 hours a month, so it's not overly burdensome on staff. We're actually doing the bulk of the work ourselves and reporting back to staff. And we're doing that with funding we have from the BC Real Estate Foundation and from BC Housing, along with some of our other financial participants. And then we're looking at actually culminating with, at this point, we look like we have a community from the island, a commitment from Coquitlam, from Gibson's, hopefully from Nelson, and another municipality that we're in negotiation with. So we'll be bringing all those groups together for a conference as well. So we'll have an idea, sharing them. People will be able to work through those, and that's going to be led by 2 experts who are well-versed and well-known in the field, Scott Hine and another individual to be confirmed, but of equal stature. So we're actually offering quite a lot. We'd like to see Nelson participate because we know the challenges of the community, having worked with them through the Laneway Housing Program, which is why the logo's on our proposal. And we feel that we have some value offered that will actually augment what the staff's already doing, save the city some money, and at the same time pilot in Canada a project I think that addresses a lot of the housing needs that are currently being challenged in Nelson in a very simple, elegant manner that can work with the current OCP and this create a small adjustment that is bonusing around this affordability. So the idea is to work with the community, what they have, and with the zoning you have and the trajectory you need, and then start to augment those very successful programs you have, and then deliver this one added layer of affordability and perpetuity. So thank you for your time. And of course, I'm open for any questions should councillors care to ask them.
Thank you. Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Jake. Sorry, are you still there? I lost you on my screen.
Sure. I am here.
My question, Jake, is around the affordability part. And let's say I've got a house and it's a 4-bedroom house. And now I'm going to sign up for your program, and now I have to do a renovation, right? I have to make it 2 houses.
Again, Councillor Renwick, we have, having not worked in the context of what's going to be appropriate to Nelson, I think there's any number of ways this could unfold. It could be a conversion of your current residence. It could be actually a new build. Obviously, it could be working with your neighbor, and the 2 properties together form some sort of equation. So there will be a cost if someone's renovating, and yes, we do have to meet BC code. There's no exception to that. We have done our pro formas. We've worked with quite experienced people from senior companies. So this isn't kind of a grad student's project. This is, we're working with seasoned professionals, and we've run financial models, and we know that your community is viable for this given land value and given sales value. So, and we're accommodating construction costs of between $400 and $500
a square foot.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's not affordable, just FYI.
It becomes affordable with that single unit when we start to produce the size units. So on a standard property, say that was 60 feet by 120, and let's say we were producing 5 or 6 units, we're looking at 1,200 square foot units, which do meet and start to be online with what your community is having in housings of that size. And then in addition to that, we're going to be able to deliver 1 unit below market that's affordable to a school teacher or a civil worker, making that wage base. We feel that actually produces something that would be affordable for your community and affordable for Councillor Woodward's son to buy at one point.
Okay, thank you, Jake.
Councillor Lachtenberg.
Yeah, so I just want to understand again, because I thought I understood, and going back, I believe I have, which is that you're talking about working with staff to develop basically a set of recommendations, and then if there's bylaw development that needs to happen after the fact, that would come after we get a presentation to say, here's the high-level view of what we're talking about for the Nelson context, and then we give a kind of a go-no-go about, yep, we like this. Now we want to start doing some bylaw work to develop the OCP amendments and that kind of thing. So really, we're not committing to anything. What we're doing is with some staff support, which makes a lot of sense that you would want them to consult. You're just going to be working to develop essentially a set of recommendations that in some ways is an asset to us. If we don't use it right away, we'll at least have more insight into what could work or not work, or how, for getting the grapple of not just affordability, but making sure we have this diverse community of all economic levels, so that we can, again, provide teachers a place to live, provide our own staff a place to live when they first move to town. Like from an economic development perspective, I think it's very clear we need that full range of housing to have a viable community. Again, what you're talking about providing us in this first phase is just all of that understanding of how this could work in Nelson. We're not committing to anything.
That's right, Councillor. We want to participate. We think the community is ideally suited to at least explore this, and we would be doing the heavy lifting, and coming back with a set of recommendations to your staff about what would be in place to make this work, and model out what the impacts would be on meeting housing needs if you chose to introduce this as an option for people. And of course, as one of the councillors mentioned, this is only a program that would be utilized by citizens who'd want to utilize it, should it even come to fruition.
Right. And just as a quick follow-up, another point of clarification here is that the reason why this is coming to us now as opposed to at our CAL or a future meeting is because we do meet 4 times a year. And sometimes this happens where we get this time crunch that has nothing to do with you. It's just the way the world works. So that's correct. Again, point of clarification there.
Yeah, the opportunity we have, I think, Councillor, I'm sorry if I'm maybe misunderstanding it, but the opportunity we have is we've been able to secure some experts to work with us. And this one-day workshop will be in early fall to mid-fall. And we wanted to basically have the opportunity to work with Nelson because of our past relationship with you. And we think it's a great community that could utilize this program. And we were hoping that we'd be able to include you in that workshop.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions? Hearing none. We had a mover and a seconder, right? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Next up is the 713 Carbonate. Notice untitled 713 Carbonate. The City of Nelson Development Service and Engineering Department has made it aware of a secondary suite constructed without a building permit at 713 Carbonate Street in August of 2020. Currently, no application has been received to legalize or decommission the suite. And there's a full report attached. And there's a recommendation. And the recommendation is that the Corporation of the City of Nelson be directed to file a notice with the Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia stating that a resolution has been made in accordance with Section 5.7 of the Community Charter by the City of Nelson relating to a land at 713 Carbonate Street, Nelson, BC, legally described as Lot 18, Block 26, Lot 95, District Plan NEP 9500, PID 013737406, and further, if an active building permit or building application is in place, that will be cancelled. And finally, that information respecting the resolution may be inspected at the office of the City of Nelson on normal working days during regular office hours. Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Lockenberg. Question, Councillor Morrison? Need sound.
I missed something here. I've read it, and then I'm reading this recommendation that says that we're posting that the corporation to file a notice with the land titles that stating that a resolution has been made. What resolution has been made? It seems to me that this property is still in violation. It's got an illegal suite in it. Building permit's never been approved. The building hasn't been decommissioned. Is there like a word missing in that, or did I just completely read it wrong?
It's the tonight's resolution, Councillor Morrison, that we're talking about. So we're speaking in the past tense, even though it's tonight, but that's how the resolution has to be read, so that the people involved will understand that the resolution has been made.
Okay, so we are putting a notice on title that there's these issues with this property.
Yeah. And that a resolution was made to that effect. But that's up to council, of course. But it's been moved and seconded. Are you clearer now? Clearer? All right, thanks.
I read it and I kept thinking that there was a has been made, or there was a word missing there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Amy. Councillor Lockenberg.
Yeah, I think I'm very much in favor of this. And if I'm understanding correctly, the owner just didn't respond. It looks like you tried to reach out to them and they didn't get back to you. So clearly, it doesn't appear to be there's an excuse for applying. So it's pretty clear to me.
So we have Sam here, but I don't think we have any questions for him at this point. So I'll just call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Thanks, Sam, for hanging in there. Appreciate that. All right, on to the next one. That's accounts payable and building permit stats. And if somebody wants to move receipt of those reports, you're welcome to do so. Or if there's something you want to pull out, you can do that too. Moved by Councillor Woodward, second by Councillor Renwick, that both of those items, Financial Department and Development Services, are moving receipt. All in favor?
Didn't see the Rusty Moose is back on.
The Rusty Moose is still not back on there. Thank you. Agenda, any reports from anybody? Sounds like most people are on holiday. Councillor Morrison, you got your hand up.
My only report actually pertains to the Regional District of Central Kootenay, and that is that at the last RDCK meeting, the resource recovery plan was finally fully completed and was accepted by the members of the board. So that was on August the 18th. And on September the 2nd, I was notified, as were city staff, that if we wish, we can write a letter of support. So there's a request has gone out to municipalities supporting, asking for letters of support in support of the resource recovery plan. They're not required. It's a voluntary action, but we have been given notification as of September the 2nd that if we would like to write a letter supporting the resource recovery plan, we can. They sent along a template to follow, and if we decide that we would like to support this, we need to have that done by the end of the month. And the other bit is I just wanted to, I've been negligent in not recognizing that that Councillor Charlwood has been appointed to the Area E APC committee for the next year. So congratulations to Councillor Charlwood on her appointment to that commission in Area E.
That's awesome. We need zoning out there.
You need zoning, yeah.
You'll hear from my neighborhood.
Yeah. So the resource
Yeah, I hear that.
for anybody that recovery plan is on the RDCK RDCK site if they want to read it in its entirety. So it's now available.
Thank you.
And that's it.
Any further, Councillor Page or Councillor Morrison, you want to give an update on current protocols at the complex? Some people have been asking. I don't know if the Rec 5 has met or...
Well, I can tell you that they do follow under the passport requirements. I know that's been clarified.
That's it?
We have met. I mean, Chair Page might want to comment. It's an unfortunate thing of kind of like a moving target, unfortunately, as they update and change and look at protocols. But they are following what comes out of the provincial health officers out of the office there, and they're doing their best to try to make sure that everybody stays safe within the complex, and are looking at groups to also be having their COVID plans in place, which most have had as they did them previously. So it's not like that music groups are having to redo their work, but maybe like I say, Councillor Page or Councillor Lockenberg have something more to add to that.
All I would add to it is, because it's an ongoing moving situation, we've obviously opened back up, and then we lifted some of the restrictions, and now we put some of them back in place. The most up-to-date information at any time is on the COVID information page for the rec centers, because of course we try and align those policies across the RDCK for just the efficiencies of government. So there is a page on the RDCK about COVID-19 information that specifically pertains to the recreation centers. And as things are changed, they are updated there. And of course, people are 100% invited to call the front desk and inquire there, as staff, as availability for staff is there to get the up-to-date information. We are going to be covered by the passport, but we still, the rec center is open and you can book your times, and there is machines and capacity available to work on your health and wellness. And the rec center and staff are very committed. There have been many improvements down there to make sure that things are isolated, that staff are protected, and that the facility is safe as safe can be, given the difficulties that go on. But we are open, and you can book times, and we won't be going back to pass or punch until this whole thing is over, but you are welcome to come and get fit.
Thank you. Councillor Morrison and Councillor Lachtenberg.
Just one additional thing there that Councillor Page didn't mention. As per our discussions earlier today, staffing is an issue down there in terms of they've posted lots of jobs and trying to get people to work. I think this must be a pan Canada issue of terms of trying to get people to work. I believe at our last meeting they talked about the fact that normally they would have potentially about 60 lifeguards available, and they're running with I don't know, 14 or 15 lifeguards currently. Interesting that lifeguard positions are unionized positions at the rec center. So again, decent paying jobs. So the plight of trying to get employees is cross sector for sure, and definitely all over the city of Nelson, if not all over Canada.
Thank you. Councillor Lachtenberg.
Yeah, and I just add to that, that, I think staff at the rec center has done a great job of keeping things going. And the staffing issue is a really good example of that. Like, not being able to maintain staff. Like, if you lose staff, then we have to go through that entire process of retraining and everything else. So to all of the people that are working out, I just want to echo what Councillor Page said and add that the alternative is a shutdown. The Premier suggested this. Public health modeling suggests that we go back to a complete shutdown. And so the vaccine card is the alternative. So for all those who are crying out at the injustice of the vaccine card, I just want to say that the alternative is nobody gets to go. So at least now some people get to go, and importantly, the rec, the NDCC can maintain operations through this time, and so we don't have to go through a restart. So if any public is listening, it's a pretty good alternative to shutting everything down.
Okay, thank you. That it, everybody? We're all okay? Motion to adjourn. Councillor Renwick and Councillor Lachtenberg, all in favour? Carried. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.
Everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.